Good morning, students, and welcome to another Social Studies BJC review class with Mistress Brown Evans. Before we get started with our lesson, you know I'm going to ask you to get a hold of some materials for this class. What are you going to need? You simply need to get a hold of a writing book and a pen or pencil. And if you have one, you can also get your school atlas. So once again, in preparation for today's lesson, I ask that you get a hold of your writing book as well as a school atlas if you have one. If you do not have an atlas, I would not worry about it because whatever assignment that I am going to give you in this class, I will project an image of the world map to assist you in completing that assignment. I am going to give you a few minutes to get those materials and then to come and find a comfortable spot in front of your cable as we get started with today's lesson. While some of you are getting the materials that you need for this class, I am going to do a shout out. I want to say a special morning to C.H. Reeves. C.H. Reeves students, are you in the house? Good morning to you. What about Anatole Rogers? Is there anyone watching from Anatole Rogers? Hello to you as well. Is anyone watching from D.W. Davis? D.W. Davis, make some noise in the place. What about our Family Island students? Long Island. Yes, students from Long Island, give a shout. And students from Mayaguana, way down in the south. If you are watching, say hello to your screen. What about our private school students? Are you out there? Are you watching as well? A pleasant morning to all of you. By this time, I know that you have what you need in preparation for the class, and so we will begin. I am projecting an image of a landform. Do you know the name of that landform? If you said peninsula, you are correct. In today's class, we will be speaking about peninsulas. We will also be speaking about capes. And of course, we will be discussing isthmus. What do all of those names have in common? Did you say that all of them are landforms? If you said that, then you are correct. Peninsulas, capes, and isthmus are all landforms. Let's take a look at today's objectives. Recall that peninsulas, capes, and isthmus are landforms. And we have already established that already. Locate peninsulas, capes, and isthmus on a map of the world. Explain the terms peninsula, cape, and isthmus. Outline 3 facts about the Arabian Peninsula. Now, you know I have to discuss our social studies vocabulary words before we go any further. What do you think are the words that I am going to project for today? Peninsula. Yes. What is the second word you imagine that I am going to put up? Cape. That's correct. And our final social studies vocabulary word is isthmus. So once again, I repeat our 3 vocabulary words for today. Those of you who are writing them down, you can do so quickly as I repeat this information. They are peninsula, cape, isthmus. If you do not know how to spell these words, that is your challenge for this week, to ensure that you know how to spell the 3 words that you see projected on the screen. I always like to ask my students, what do they know about the topic? And I have the word peninsula there. What can you tell me about peninsulas even before we go further in our discussion? Are you thinking that Florida is a peninsula? Yes, Florida is a peninsula. And I am going to go out on a limb and to say that almost every Bahamian knows the word Florida. You know why you know it, and I know it why. It's a favorite shopping spot, isn't it? Did you also think that peninsulas have water on 3 sides? Then you are also correct. Let's explore peninsulas further in the lesson. I have projected 2 images of peninsulas. You can see that they are different sizes. So just as we have discussed earlier, a peninsula, by definition, is a piece of land that is surrounded by water only on 3 sides. If you can see my cursor moving, this is water. On this side, you can see water here, and you can see water here. As I go to the other peninsula on the left, you can see water here, and you can see water here. You can see water here. By the way, if the landform is completely surrounded by water, what did we establish in our last class is the name of that landform? Yes, if you said an island, that is correct. Land that is completely surrounded by water is an island. Any landform that has water only on 3 sides is a peninsula. A peninsula may be a part of an island, it can be a part of a country, or it can be a part of a continent. Now, the 2 peninsulas that I have projected, do you know the names of them? The one that is on the left and being indicated by my cursor right here. What is the name of that peninsula? It is the Arabian Peninsula. What about the peninsula that is on the right? That peninsula is the California Peninsula. The California Peninsula. We are going to continue on to our next slide. It is showing a world map. The question now is, can you remember the following peninsulas from your discussions with your various teachers throughout the year. Can you remember the names of these peninsulas you've already been taught? That one there is the Iberian Peninsula. That is correct. The Iberian Peninsula, which is the tip of which continent? Europe. Then we have the Scandinavia Peninsula. The Scandinavia Peninsula, made up of the countries of Norway and Sweden. This peninsula is also located on what continent? Europe. We have the Yucatan Peninsula right here, the Yucatan Peninsula. And on what continent is the Yucatan Peninsula? This is North America. Yes, you are correct. And right next to the Yucatan Peninsula, we have the Florida Peninsula. Again, you can see water on how many sides? 3 sides. The Florida Peninsula is also located on what continent? North America is correct. Right at the far right, you can see another peninsula. It's very slender. This peninsula is called the Malay Peninsula. The Malay Peninsula. Last class, we talked about the Malay archipelagos. And if you remember, an archipelago is a group or chain of islands. Right here, though, in today's lesson, we are also focusing on a peninsula, this time the Malay Peninsula. Again, you can see water on 3 sides. 1, water, 2, water, 3, water. Our next peninsula is the Arabian Peninsula. I showed you a picture of the Arabian Peninsula in a previous slide. This is the Arabian Peninsula right here. Water again, 1 side, water 2 sides, water 3 sides. And the Arabian Peninsula is located on what continent? Asia is correct. I also showed you a picture of the California Peninsula. Once again, take note of my cursor at the left of the projection. Yes, this is the California Peninsula. And on what continent is the California Peninsula? The continent of North America. Right next to the California Peninsula, above it, we are now looking at the Alaskan Peninsula. This is the peninsula of Alaska. Also located on what continent? You know it, we are still on North America. I have a peninsula that is at the far right. Do you see that big word? Yes, it is Kamchatka Peninsula. Kamchatka Peninsula. The Kamchatka Peninsula is located on what continent? The largest continent in the world, Asia. You are absolutely correct. We also have the Korean Peninsula next to the Kamchatka Peninsula. The Korean Peninsula, which is North and South Korea. Right here, also on the continent of Asia. And I hope that you have paid special attention to those peninsulas, because we do test you on peninsulas on your BJC examination. Remember, this is the Social Studies BJC review. class. On your screen now, you see my assignment. On what continents are the following peninsulas found? We have just discussed them earlier, and even as we discuss them, for many of them, we already gave the continents on which these peninsulas are located. I am going to know right now if you are listening carefully and you are participating in our discussion, because now you have to do it all on your own. I repeat the assignment for those persons who may just be joining us. I want you to take your writing book and I need you to write this information. On what continents are the following peninsulas located? Iberian Peninsula, Scandinavia, Yucatan, Florida, Malay, Arabian, and the Korean Peninsula. Once you have finished writing the names of these peninsulas, if you have your atlas with you, you can begin to write the continents on which all of these peninsulas are located. If you do not have an atlas, do not worry about it. I am going to show a screen of the world map, and you are going to use that to assist you in answering or filling in that information. Are you almost ready? I believe you are. I am going to give you just one more minute for the person who perhaps just joined us. One more minute to write the names of the peninsulas that you see projected. And you may begin filling in the correct answer if you have the means to do so, or if you can remember from your prior knowledge or your prior discussions with the various teachers at our junior high schools. I am now showing the world map. The good news for you is that you can still see the names of the peninsulas that we discussed earlier. So that should help you in quickly finding out the continent. As you can see, only 3 continents, or the names of 3 continents, can be seen. So 4, yes, we have 4 continents, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can see the names of 4 continents. So you must know the other continents by shape. As you are writing the names of those continents, I remind you that on the BJC examination, you are going to see a blank world map. There will be no named continents, no named peninsulas on your examination. So you must know them by shape. Are you ready? Let's go through our answers together. And as we fill out or fill in the correct answers, I want you to put a check if you got it correct. On what continent is the Iberian Peninsula? Did you have Europe? Then you are correct. What about the Scandinavian Peninsula? The answer is Europe. Do you know where the Yucatan Peninsula is? North America. And the Florida Peninsula? Also located on North America. What about the Malay Peninsula? The Malay Peninsula is found on the continent of Asia. The Arabian Peninsula? It is located as well on Asia. What about the Korean Peninsula? The Korean Peninsula is found on Asia. So I gave you how many peninsulas? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Did you get 7 out of 7? Good job. Did you get 6 out of 7? Very good. If you got any of those questions correct, give yourself a round of applause. Now, if you got a few wrong, then you know that these peninsulas become your study focus for the remainder of this week. I want you to know all of them by the time our BJC examination date is given. We have 3 more additional peninsulas. I did not ask you to write these down earlier, but I am going to invite you to do so now. So we have 3 more peninsulas, Kamchatka. We discussed them earlier in the lesson. Of course, Kamchatka is on Asia. California is on North America. Alaska is also on North America. So we are adding 3 more peninsulas to the 7 that you just did to give you a total of 10 peninsulas. I think our mathematics teacher will be proud of us today. So we have a total of 7 plus 3 is 10 peninsulas. As you go through your atlas, those persons who do have them, if you see any additional peninsulas, you can also add them to our list. Are you ready? Let's continue on with our lesson. I am going to play a video about the Arabian Peninsula. I want you to listen carefully and watch carefully as I play this video on again the Arabian Peninsula.
When many of us think of the Arabian Peninsula, we automatically think of a gigantic desert. After all, the Arabian Peninsula is home to the Arabian Desert, one of the largest and driest deserts in the world, similar to the Sahara, which is just to the west of the peninsula. If, in our imaginations, we can see anyone at all, it is a roving nomad riding a camel, herding other camels across the desert. However, that's not entirely true. Arabia is a peninsula of surprising diversity. Yes, there is a gigantic desert, and it does take up a great deal of land. However, scattered around the sides of the desert are environments that have been home to humanity for ages and have provided for some truly unique cultures. When the ancient Romans talked about Arabia, they meant a region of the peninsula stretching from modern-day Jordan south, including an area along the Red Sea that we call the Hijaz. The Hijaz itself is quite unique in comparison to the rest of Arabia in that it is relatively well suited for farming. This means that people were able to settle down into cities and then begin trading. The most important of these ancient trading cultures was the Nabateans, a group that lived at the same time as the Romans. While we don't know too much about this culture, we do know that the Nabateans grew incredibly rich from trade, as they had merchants who could travel all over the Arabian Peninsula and bring back new and exciting goods. These rich merchants liked to show off their wealth, but at the same time wanted protection. As a result, they built a number of cities carved from solid stone. The most famous of these, Petra, has architecture that rivals that of Greece or Rome, and just from looking at it, you get a sense of the wealth required to build these structures. Of the places that the Nabatean merchants were likely to go, the most famous to the Romans was a place they called Arabia Felix, or Lucky Arabia. Today, we refer to it as Yemen or Oman, which are both located on the southeastern side of the Arabian Peninsula. This region gets some rain, but not as much as the Hijaz. Instead, the climate is perfect for growing some crops that can't be found anywhere else in the world. The most important of these is incense, a plant resin that is burned in temples and sacrifices. As the Greeks and Romans, as well as other ancient peoples, like to keep their gods happy, keeping the temples smelling like incense was crucial. Therefore, it's little surprise that the people of Arabia Felix were able to charge very high prices for an otherwise useless plant. The people in this part of Arabia had another factor in their favor. Being on the southeastern coast of the peninsula meant that they were close to the spices of India. While the prices of these spices would drop as more people traded them after Islam began to spread, any spice merchant in Arabia Felix was a very rich person. Arabia Felix was separated from much of the rest of the Arabian Peninsula by a large desert. In fact, the desert was so vast and empty that the Arabs named it the Empty Quarter. The word quarter actually only refers to part of the desert, namely the part without any oases. Needless to say, this was not the sort of place where people wanted to get lost. As a result, the few people who lived here were almost always the nomads and camel herders who we imagine as living in Arabia. Wearing heavy robes to guard themselves from sun and sandstorms, they often guided the merchants crisscrossing the desert between cities, but were fiercely independent. Whereas the people of Nabatea and Arabia Felix had written languages, these Bedouin people, the nomads who lived in the desert, did not write their language down, preferring to transmit knowledge orally. However, it was the language of this people later called Arabic, which would be used throughout the Islamic world. Also, these were definitely not the sort of people to get lost in the desert. In a sea of sand or landmarks, the Bedouin were among the first astronomers, using the night sky to navigate at night. If you somehow managed to survive a journey east across the great deserts of Arabia, chances are that you'd stumble on a small village clinging to the coast of the Persian Gulf. These small ports were amazingly wealthy, but always very tiny. They became extremely rich from diving for pearls, as these precious gems were and are very rare, and the divers of these small villages were lucky not only with good skill, but many oysters with a tendency to produce pearls. Also, some trade from across the Persian Gulf and further away, as well as fishing, kept the people of these villages busy, but also kept them small. In later years, these villages would develop into very rich cities like Dubai. In this lesson, we looked at how geography affected the Arabian Peninsula. Far from being a gigantic desert, the peninsula has a surprising array of ecosystems that encourage both civilizations and nomads. From growing wheat in the Hijaz, to pearl diving in the Persian Gulf, and from harvesting incense in Arabia Felix, to navigating the stars in the Empty Quarter. The environment of the Arabian Peninsula effectively dictated to its residents how they should live.
You have just watched a video presentation about the Arabian Peninsula. Now let's go through some of the information that would have been discussed. You need not write this down if you do not want to. I am just going to highlight some of the information that was said in the video. So the Arabian Peninsula is home to one of the largest and driest deserts in the world, the Arabian Desert. At some point in our discussions of landforms, we will speak specifically to deserts. But in today's lesson, we are still focusing on peninsulas, capes, and isthmus. Some sections of the Arabian Peninsula are suitable for farming. Incense, which is a plant resin, is burnt in temples, and that incense is grown in Arabia. The language called Arabic is also derived in Arabia. So now that we have discussed peninsulas, let's look at the word cape, C-A-P-E, cape. A cape is a pointed piece of land that sticks out into the water. And I have an example here of Cape Cod. Once again, a cape is a pointed piece of land that is projecting into the water. Do you know about the following capes? These are some popular ones that I've seen on the BJC examination over the years. You will do well to remember these capes. The first one that I projected is Cape Horn. Again, a cape is a pointed piece of land that sticks out into the water, and so we are referring to the very, very tip of South America. The very, very tip is called Cape Horn. Another popular cape is Cape of Good Hope. And if you are looking at my cursor, it's pointing at the very tip of the continent of Africa. And again, this is Cape of Good Hope. And I can't tell you how many examination scripts I have seen either Cape Horn on or the Cape of Good Hope. If you learned only about two capes, ensure that you know Cape Horn, Cape of Good Hope. But because you have such bright minds, we are going to ensure that we know all of the capes that I am going to discuss today. And so now we are looking at Cape Farewell. Cape Farewell is the tip right here. Looking at my cursor, the tip of this landform. What is the name of this landform? We discussed this in earlier classes. The largest in this category of landform as well. It is an island, yes. Yes, Greenland, the name of this landform, is the largest island in the world. And last class we established that Andros is the largest island in the Bahamas. So we're looking at Greenland, and we are now focusing our attention once more to the very tip of Greenland, which is our Cape Farewell. Let's go down to Australia. And we're looking at the tip, western side of Australia. And right here, this pointed piece of land, this very small pointed piece of land that my cursor is indicating, is called Cape Leeuwin. Cape Leeuwin. And I have a red arrow that is also pointing at another cape that is also located in Australia. The name of that cape is Cape York. Cape York. And if you notice, sometimes I have the word cape spelled out, C-A-P-E. Sometimes I only have a capital C indicating that that is a cape. So you, as you look at your world map, you will see either of them. You may see a C, which is indicating Cape, or you may see the entire word spelt out, C-A-P-E. So I'm going to give you just another minute to write the names of those capes. Cape Farewell, and if you want to, you can just put in bracket Greenland. Cape Horn, you can put in bracket South America. Cape of Good Hope in Africa. Cape Leeuwin, Australia, and Cape York, also in Australia. You have just another minute to quickly jot that information. And again, as you are writing that, I say to you, it is very, very important that you know all of these capes as you prepare for the examination. But two very, very popular capes are Cape Horn of South America and Cape of Good Hope of Africa. Oh, I have a slide that actually has that information. Yes, so those of you who had needed the extra minute, you have that extra minute now as I am projecting what we just discussed. So you have that, you have a minute more to complete your writing. Cape Horn, South America, Cape of Good Hope, Africa, Cape Farewell, Greenland, Cape Leeuwin, West Australia, and Cape York, also in Australia. Now we are going to discuss isthmus. An isthmus is also a landform. If you see the projected image that I have there, and it has a red circle going around that particular spot. The red circle is indicating the isthmus. So what is an isthmus? An isthmus is a narrow piece of land with sea on either side, and this isthmus connects two large land masses. So an isthmus is a narrow piece of land that connects two large land masses. And in this picture, the two large land masses would be what continents? North America and South America. And the example of the isthmus that is being shown on your screen is the Isthmus of Panama. Yes, the Isthmus of Panama connecting North America to the South American continent. And I am going to repeat that an isthmus is a narrow piece of land and it has water on two sides. Water is here indicated by my cursor. The water is here also being indicated by my cursor. One of the most popular isthmuses that I've seen on the examination is the Isthmus of Panama. And so I advise you to quickly write this information in your writing book. I'm going to give you another minute to make a note of what an isthmus is and the example that I have highlighted. Are you ready? We're almost at the conclusion of our lesson. So before we say goodbye to each other, I want to ensure that you remember our key words for today. What are our social studies vocabulary words that we have discussed at the beginning of our lesson? Peninsula. You are absolutely correct. A peninsula is a piece of land surrounded by water on three sides. If you can remember the name of any of the peninsulas we have discussed, I want you to shout it out. Did you say Scandinavia? Did you say the Yucatan Peninsula? Did you say Florida Peninsula? How about Malay Peninsula? Yes, you are correct. If you have said any of those peninsulas, and we have also talked about additional peninsulas earlier, but I have only called the names of a few just now. So we have peninsula, we have the word cape, C-A-P-E, and we have established that a cape is a pointed piece of land that sticks out into the water. And we have discussed several capes, but I told you that there are two popular ones for the examination. And those ones are, can you shout it out? Cape Horn. And on what continent is Cape Horn? South America. What was the next popular cape I told you? Cape of Good Hope. And on what continent is the Cape of Good Hope? Africa. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Of course, you also understood, as we discussed capes, that even though there are two popular ones, you are going to know as many capes as you can in preparation for the examination, and you have them written in your books already. Finally, the last word that I told you about is isthmus, a narrow piece of land with sea on either side that connects two large land masses. Now, what is the name of that popular isthmus that I told you? I almost said the answer just now. I had to pause. That isthmus is Panama. Yes, the Isthmus of Panama is a very common one that is tested on the BJC examination. So this brings us to the end of our BJC review class for today. In today's lesson, we had continued our discussion on landform. In our next lesson, we have a few more landforms that we need to discuss before we move on. So I look forward to seeing you at our next lesson, and I want you to pay attention to all of the landforms that we are pointing out, because they are the ones that we love to test you on the BJC examination. I know that you know a lot of this information, but from my years of experience in teaching, I know that some of you have forgotten many of those peninsulas, many of those capes, and some of you have even forgotten about the Isthmus of Panama. And so I remind you to study, study, study. Continue to go over all of the information that we are presenting to you. And when the BJC examination comes around, you are going to be confident because you know the information. You will know the answers to the questions that are being asked of you. So I invite you to have a wonderful day and continue to keep safe in your homes or wherever you have to go. Continue to follow all of the guidelines that have been established by authorities, especially as it relates to COVID-19. I look forward to seeing you. Well, I won't be able to see you, but you certainly will be able to hear my voice and perhaps see my picture. And so I look forward to whatever connection we are making in our next class. Have a wonderful day.